This is long overdue. Look, it wasn't intentional, I've just been very busy and unable to talk about Build, and, well, it's like, every time I get around to filming this, the show releases the next episode, or rather, the subtitle groups release the next episode, and so then I have to catch up, then I have to mull over the next episode, and basically, I am 20 episodes behind now, despite having watched all 21 episodes of the show, plus the YouTube spinoff now. So, it's not going to get any better, just let me go over the show. And there's where I pause because I don't know how to start this now at this point. Okay, last time I talked about Build was literally the first episode. So, going back to that, Sento Kiryu is an amnesiac in a alternate Earth than the normal Rider continuity. I'm very glad they quantified that specifically as it being an alternate Earth, because that makes the rest of the show simpler. That results in there being no conflict with past continuity. They were very smart to do that, but I don't like them doing that. It's like, do not... A big thing I have with, like, Saban and, like, other Toei shows doing that is you build up so much. You build up a world, a universe, and then you just throw it away to do another show, and it's like, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be discarding stuff like that. It opens up the possibilities for you to utilize a completely fresh setting, yes, but there was so much there that was beloved by people that to just ignore it is disconcerting, or you make it more complicated in the long term to just, like, ignore it. Granted, some shows should be thrown out of continuity due to how horrible they are. People should ignore they ever existed. Most of the Neo Saban stuff, Q Ranger, I'd say Ghost, but Ghost got screwed over. The Rider reboot events, where they did previous, redid previous writers from the show era. Those are acknowledged as out of canon with everything else because they conflict so badly. Those are the kinds of things you need to throw out of continuity when, in comparison to literally everything else, they don't hold up at all. That's when you should actually throw stuff out. But Build has been amazingly good. Like, there are only really 2 or 3 things in the show that are problematic. The first is that nearly every episode has a form debut. Like, with mix and match riders like this, you inevitably expect them to do it, but no, there is a unique form debut in almost every episode of the show, and it's like, it's absolute form overload, and I'm amazed they're making that many suits. Actually, it's a problem that they're making that many suits, as then the budget's all going to that, and you're not making the monsters of the series that you need Sento to fight. And if you're not having Sento Kiryu, the main star of the show, fighting actual monsters, you're just recycling the same suits all the time. You make the show tedious and repetitive, and that was one of the big problems with Exade and Ghost. You didn't have them actually really fighting any more than repetitious battles. Sure, you did something with them different with them almost every time, but you can't have them constantly fighting the same enemy. That's been the entire issue of Toei's shows as of late. They keep doing this with just the suit recycling. I think the last time they legitimately did it... Okay, I didn't have much problem with Exade doing it because, again, story reasons for the repetition. They're game characters. They can respawn like that. That's why the Bugster battles didn't seem so bad in comparison, but, like, the last time they really did it well was Zyuohger with the whole Bangray storyline. So yeah, that's been a problem. Form overload, preventing them from progressing anything else with just general monster fighting. Especially since Sento has gonna have 60 form bottles, full bottles to potentially do forms off of, and we're like at 27 in confirmed form count. That's just like, that is extremely high for unique forms. O's got away with it because there were only really, when you take the mixing and matching of them out of the way, he only had really 8 suits that they just took pieces of to create all the form changing. That's not very expensive or overutilizing the form change gimmick. Ghost made use of it because they had the undersuit, and then the different forms were done by the jackets the suit would put over it. X8 was actually very restrained about this, as the Goshots either created the full suit or armor pieces that they could latch onto the undersuits. So, yeah, Build's definitely been kind of an expensive show from Toei's production standpoint with all the unique suit forms and whatnot. The other thing that's been driving me nuts is how the show has been utilizing Ryuga Banjo. Now, Ryuga's story has mostly been completed by the time I'm actually recording this, so yeah. Ryuga was introduced first episode, and I liked what they did with him in that it was clear he was going to become a writer from how they set up the events of the series, but they delayed his introduction into as a writer until the show hit double digits. That was good. Then, 4 episodes after he debuted as a writer, he got his next form upgrade into Cross Z Charge by switching drivers. That's bad. See, part of what's been driving the show crazy again is the form change stuff. So, like, you had an excellent opening arc for him to finally get his power, take up his power-up into a rider, and then you discard that upgrade for story reasons. Okay, you're doing it for story reasons, but it's like, why even give him the original rider form if you're just going to have him switch permanently to the upgrade just not even a month later? It wasn't even a month's difference before they did that, and it's like, what is even the point? I legitimately asked that. It feels like they kind of lost the plot on that. What was the point of that otherwise? Could you have introduced it a bit earlier in the show? Maybe gotten a bit more life out of the suit? Not by the pacing of which they introduced the bottles and the stories, so, like, that's kind of a microcosm of the problem with him. They keep shoving Ryuga to the side as if he has no actual role in the story, despite being around since the first episode and being the show's secondary writer. It's like, a lot of the time you could completely write him out of the show. Ryuga's initial arc was, he was framed for murder. He was framed for the murder of Takumi Katsuragi. I think his first name is Takumi, but Katsuragi is definitely his last name, and was summarily captured by Faust, the evil organization behind turning people into monsters in this show. Sorry. Faust's bigger plan, as was revealed, was to create an army of Smash, the monsters of the show, so as to use them as weapons in defense of the division of Japan that's been caused by the Skywall. Japan's been split into 3 by the Skywall phenomena, which was caused by the Pandora's Box, which is all of it releasing this type of toxin known as nebula gas, which, if injected into humans, causes them to transform into the Smash. Those that actually resist the nebula gas effect come to have what is known as a hazard level. Hazard level 1 kills the victim. Hazard level 2 changes them into a Smash, but they can survive conversion. Hazard level 3 and no transformation to a Smash allows a person to use the driver technology, mainly the build driver. Hazard level 4 allows someone to use the Splash driver, a upgraded version of the build driver that uses Splash Jelly, which is a different form, basically a containment of the nebula gas phenomena into a stable and safe form. At least it was initially, because the first stable form nebula gas was contained in was the full bottles. Full bottles are completely safe to be used, but aren't as it's not as strong as a refined Smash, whereas the Splash Jelly is putting the nebula gas into a liquid form versus a expanding solid that the full bottles do for the transformation. So it leaks more into the user's mind and can affect them to want to want to fight. It's a proponent of warfare in kind of the same way that Pandora's box, the original mythological Pandora's box, unleashed all the evils of the world, and most of the evils of the world can be found in wanting to wage war in pretty much any form. It's pretty much the effect that Pandora's box has had on anyone who's come into possession of it, or at least been inflicted by its effects, as when the Skywall tragedy happened, a flash of light pretty much corrupted everyone that was at the event. Most of the head prime ministers of the three divisions of the country, except the division that most of the series is taking place in, wanting their own forms of conquest and shaping the country according to those whims. It's actually very interesting in that all these people have been corrupted due to one person choosing to unlock the damn thing after they bought it back from Mars, and all the things that have resulted from it. Katsuragi, getting back to the points to the backstory stuff, was a researcher into the Pandora's box and the light phenomena after being exposed to it, and after coming to find the effects of the nebula gas, started to research it and found a way to purify its essence into the base full bottles. Also answering how Build got his equipment before the show was running and all the full bottles got together, if they were part of his development. But that was problematic from learning that Sento Kiryu was supposed to be the creator of the build driver in the original information, not Katsuragi. And Katsuragi isn't around anymore because he was killed and Banjo was framed for his murder before Faust took him to be experimented on and then put him on the run. Well, this actually ties into a conversation I had with Mars Girl, Kaylin Saucedo of the Tokusatsu Network, also of Channel Awesome. Yeah, we got into a conversation on Twitter right when the show was beginning to air about how oddly themed Sento's name was. See, let's see where is that detail? The etymology behind Sento Kiryu's name is, it bears the kanji for Sensha, aka tank, and the kanji for rabbit, to, in the construction of it. Sento. Well, since his base form is rabbit tank, we all thought that was kind of strange, but I kind of chalked it down initially to how a lot of Japanese series have thematic naming for their characters. And, that was a pretty, I shouldn't say it was an excuse, but, it's a running logic for so many of them. It's like, you can hand-wave that away. And it actually ended up being a plot point, and that kind of shows how smart this series is, as Sento Kiryu is actually Katsuragi. His face and physiology was changed thanks to one of the other characters, Soichi Isurugi, who over time was revealed to be the primary antagonist for the show Blood Stark. Katsuragi eventually turned against Faust and the construction of the build driver for reasons I don't remember being elaborated on, but essentially what Stark did is faked Katsuragi's death, changed his face, and then put him through the Smash creation process that Katsuragi had developed in order to harvest nebula gas and the components to create full bottles. Essentially, from what we've been able to discern, the weapon development was mostly for self-defense, and so they could harvest out the full bottles, presumably from prisoners. We haven't exactly gotten a lot of elaboration on those plot points, but basically when Soichi did that, Katsuragi, for all intents and purposes, ceased to exist. He suffered from a complete and utter death of personality, and the blank person that Katsuragi was turned into was then named Sento, and Soichi has been using him ever since to continue Katsuragi's research and development for his own purposes. So, his odd naming conventions, thanks to, Japanese naming puns, is a very clever and intelligent plot point, as Sento is now the bearer of his past self's sin in all this, and since that revelation, it's been hitting him pretty damn hard. And he's been trying to take ownership of it. He had a pretty, don't want to say extended conflict with Banjo over it, because Sento is literally the reason why his life was destroyed. He lost his girlfriend, whose remaining efforts was turned into the Dragonful bottle. Again, an example of the very good storytelling of this show. And just basically, he's running off of mostly guilt now, and his inability to properly control what is spun out of his research on all this, because then the other divisions of Japan, its main setting is Toto. Primary antagonist right now in the grand scheme between the three of them is Hokuto, and then there's Sato, which is just biding its time currently. And what the current arc of the show is a just general widespread war between Hokuto and Toto that has devolved into a proxy war between Sento and Ryuga in their rider forms versus Hokuto's own breed of Hard Smash. And Soichi gave Hokuto the Smash creation technology alongside stolen blueprints for Ryuga's Splash Driver, and basically how to develop all the full bottles. He also incidentally gave this to Sato, so they also have full bottles. So there are currently 60 full bottles in play from all three sides. The initial 20 from Toto were developed, were all the first 10 forms that Sento has used throughout the series. And since we started on the Hokuto war arc, we've been getting even more from a mix of the ones from both Hokuto and Sato, which is why the current form count reads at 27 to 29 right now. It's like, he's got 2 pluses for that, so it's like, the form count is a bit varied here, for that. So, and worse with all this is, Sento is a pacifist. It's like, he fights, but without any will to actually harm or kill people, mainly to, undo the damage of the full bottles. He was doing this even before he learned of his identity as Katsuragi. He would save who he could from the effects of the full bottles, but if someone were to die after, removal of the nebula gas from them, it would be seen as not really his fault in this, as several people that have been saved from being stuck in their monster forms have incidentally died, such as Ryuga's girlfriend. So, on one hand, we have that mentality of it. On the other hand, well, episode 21 just dropped, and Build got his new super form upgrade of Rabbit Tank Hazard, a full-body black form that will probably be seen pretty consistently going through the next part of the arc, because basically the only difference between any of the Hazard forms is the 2 eyepieces for that go on the front of the faceplate. So pretty much any of the previous forms he's utilized can have a Hazard form, as all they need to do is swap out those pieces of the faceplate. They don't need to do any of the more interim best match detailing if they can just access all those weapons from this new Hazard form. Problem is, Hazard form is much like Kamen Rider Drive and Mach's Dead Heat form, is that it's uncontrollable. Its effects are more a mental component instead of the form like driving out of control, which they need to gain mastery over. With Sento's issue is that it's pretty much the same problem as the Splash Driver. If you don't have a high enough hazard level or mentality to resist its effects, you get turned into a berserker. It's now happening with all three of the introduced riders in the show now. The Splash Driver inflicts the same effect on Ryuga. Hokuto's main rider, Kamen Rider Grease, who incidentally is played by, I'm forgetting his name, but he was the doofus character from Kamen Rider Kiva, the protagonist's father, Noboru, I think it was? Noboru, Kamen Rider Kiva, Noboru, Taiga Nobori, that was it. No, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. Shoma Yamamoto, is that right? No, that's not right. Yeah, wrong one. That is definitely the wrong one. Otoya Kurenai, that was it. He was the actor that played Otoya Kurenai. Kohei Takeda. Yeah, that's the one. He really has not aged a day. It's like, I don't know why I was screwing that up, but yeah, he joined the cast. I think it was a good addition. He's been eclectic when he joined the cast, and compliments the very good acting from Atsuhiro Inukai, Sento's actor, which really hit it out of the park this last week in episode 21 with how devastated he was from actually intentionally killing someone in all this, which, as was my entire tangent, again, completely against his morals to even be involved in this war. He wants to help people, he wants to protect people, and warfare, it's like, it's very clearly crushing him because, you know, this isn't the way to go around it. And I like this as it's invoking... I don't want to say it's invoking Yusuke Godai from Kuga, but it's very similar to that in that the completely black form of the rider is essentially the one that could most lead them to actually breaking that moral. As, remember back to Kuga, when Kuga went ultimate, he actually had to kill someone with his bare hands. Not that indirect destruction glyph thing, which destroyed them intermittently. It's like, you actually have to feel yourself killing them with your bare hands with ultimate's power. And that's what happened there, and that's pretty much what happened this week. And he only went that far because Ryuga wasn't listening to him and trying to end the war, like, quickly with an invasion, and it's like, that doesn't work. And basically, the big problem with the show is how, I keep coming back to this, is how it deals with Ryuga and making him right. They keep trying to build a Shotaro and Philip from Kamen Rider double dynamic between them, where Sento is the brains, Ryuga the heart. But the problem is, they don't ever make Ryuga right. It's like, they always have to correct him after he goes off on this impulsive whim, instead of seeing that sometimes you can't do everything based on logic. You need some type of experience factor. You need some type of interpersonal interaction. Instead of that, you just have this impulsive, reckless idiots, and it's effectively the step that they kept saying that Shotaro was, but the show actually contradicted in that. But instead, this way, they are buying full force into it. And that's irritating, as it's not validating the alternative perspective like Double constantly did, in saying that you have this reason to act this way, you're just going too far. No, they're going, you have a reason to act this way, but you're taking completely out of context and doing stuff that actually defeats the entire point of what you're doing. And it's like, that's not exactly in any way making them equals. And okay, Ryuga is not a main character. He's not the main rider. He's not in a deuteragonist duality, he's clearly the secondary rider. He's clearly the there to be second to Senso and revolve in his arc, but really, from how the show has utilized him up to this point, you could pretty much remove him from the story and have one of the other characters do what he does, minus Rider's suit up, and not much would change in the story. Like, his character matters that little to things thus far. It's like, there are little things, little moments where he has an impact on the story, like him having a natural affinity to figuring out full bottle best matches, which Sento doesn't possess at all. But then you have the more recent build events where he seems to have actually gained that ability to figure out best matches from context clues, and then it's like his story is now his one big contribution to the story, being able to figure out best matches, is now gone. So, yeah, Ryuga, I think, is the big hang-up for the story. And it's unfortunate as, you know, if they didn't, keep shoving the guy to the side and making him the butt monkey of the show, I actually kind of like the guy. And it's sad they end up doing that as, yeah, irrelevant to the story, just there for power-ups and gimmick toys. Otherwise, things are pretty interesting. Like, the whole Faust development, you thought they were going to be the big enemy? No, they were just doing this because they were expecting a war to break out. And, oh look, a war over the Pandora box between the different divisions of the country did break out. Why is the country divided, even though you can get around the Skywall? Because the people influenced by the Pandora box's power, who took control of each of the 3 districts, wanted them to be at war. They wanted them to actually conquer everything and then make over the entire country in their depictive image. Like, Hokuto tries to say it's a agricultural district working on the development of the land and the family for more prosperity. It is a complete lie. The land is barren, the people uneducated, and they've put all the money in their district towards production of warfare, more than any of the other districts combined. So, it's like, even the sigils of each of them, like the symbols of each of the countries, kind of has this duality to them. There's like an overt thing which reflects what they're supposed to be, and then something else that actually is what they're intentionally doing. Hokuto specifically looks like a flower, but then you look at it at another angle and you realize it more looks like an explosion or some kind of laser firing down and splitting the ground. And if they end up revealing that they have a super weapon that's a laser, that would make so much sense. So much sense. Yeah, it's like, this show takes very many levels, and it's not that it's overt with them, but you can kind of see the clues, and they're seeding back to them correctly. At least, unless you're using one of the groups that does liberalizations, and they change the dialogue that is actually seeding all this, which has been a problem this year. Because it always is. Because there's always someone that takes the more liberal interpretation route, which screws over the actual seeded clues of the series, which I think the last time we had a series that did this intentionally with the subtextual double entendres was Gaim, and my god, did Gaim end up having hate them because people kept missing the clues. Full bottle gimmicks. I kind of discussed it earlier, but I love a lot of these forms. Like I said, I am not a fan of the asymmetrical designs. I like it when the designs are almost the same, both sides down, instead of like one side of the body having one type of body part thing. But Honestly, I think they're mixed up enough through the angle they intersect at with the play molding crushing down them that it overall works for me. It's weird. It's mixed up enough and balanced on both sides that even though it's not symmetrical, there's synergy between the effects on both sides. Like, I think my favorite form so far is Hawk Gatling. Like, that one just looks excellent to me, and with a close second to Nin Nin Comic, because again, the shade of gold yellow they use for that one versus purple, they're complementary colors, and I think the ones that work best are things that are like playing off of color theory, where it's the most aesthetically pleasing. The shade of orange and the shade of gray, or gunmetal gray, they use for Hawk Gatling, they're not complementary colors exactly, but the synergy of them works excellently. Plus, now we can actually say we have a rider that's based off of soft drink. We have literally created Pepsi Man in the form of Rabbit Tank Sparkling, and possibly Rabbit Tank Sparkling Hazard. That's likely not going to be a thing, but that should be a thing, at least in the toy line. Actually, that kind of more defeats the purpose of even producing the Rabbit Tank Sparkling special full bottle for episode 16. It's now episode 21. Rabbit Tank Hazard debuted in episode 20, the very end of episode 20. Episode 21 is a complete upgrade beyond Rabbit Tank Sparkling, so why even buy the collectible? It's the same problem with the Splash Driver and the Dragon Splash Jelly. If you have that, if you want to get the item, why even bother with the Dragon Full Bottle and the Cross Z Dragon specific trinket for the Build Driver, if you can just get that and have play acts the more powerful form? While the base full bottles are going to constantly have the synergy for the best match system and the random match system, where for play value, it's like, why even bother with these side things if you're going to undermine actually showcasing them like this? It's like the two-headed serpent. And the heads are eating each other with people Bandai not realizing that there's going to be a point where you can't actually keep producing collectibles like this if one side of the toy line is going to eat the other alive with the play value stuff. It's like, have they not switched up? That's the key. They've been having this problem where they release a secondary driver for the show for some time now. Like, for unique riders it works, but then you have the ones which are intended for mass production. Multiple people can get them, multiple people can use them, and then you keep producing another one that has a lot more limited use. Like, I've admittedly been a sucker for several of these. The Genesis driver had cross-playability with the Sengoku driver in Gaim. The secondary belt for Ghost was completely useless. There was a complete crossplay for... Yeah, there was complete transformation trinket utilization in both the drives belts, so that wasn't actually a problem. But then you get the more exclusive ones, where you can't effectively cross the power-ups, and then you're getting more of a problem. I think they really are starting to hit trinket overload. Like, between Build and Q Ranger, they've released over 100 little collectible trinkets, and it's like, are you guys really that desperate for a big payday? Because you're going to hit the point where people can't actually buy any more of these than they can. That's actually what Bandai of America has been experiencing for quite some time now, with how they've absolutely horribly utilized the collectible gimmicks in the cheaper to make but priced more expensively items they've been making for Power Rangers since Megaforce. Yeah, definitely Megaforce. Like, they've jacked up the prices of the cards. They make horrible quality keys for jacked up prices. They made horrible quality batteries for jacked up prices. And then they made horrible quality shuriken for jacked up prices for between Megaforce, Dino Charge, and Ninja Steel. And it's like, as I keep pointing out, kept pointing out in the Dino Charge videos, it's like the horrible quality makes them sell less. And here, the quality control is pretty damn good for the full bottles, but so they're worth it, but the cost of collecting them all at the end of the day is going to make it so that it's like, it's not going to be for something that a lot of people are going to go out of their way to do, especially since a lot of them are locked as like gashapon items and whatnot. It's like, you didn't even have people collecting all of the switches in 4s, and it's like, there was a point to collecting all the switches in 4s. There doesn't seem to be a point to collecting all the full bottles for build. And, like, 4s was a good show. 4s balanced their insane number of collectibles very well, but that was pretty much the limit for people's tolerance for the collectible gimmick items. They did not go anywhere near that far for years after it. Like, Drive maxed out at, like, 30 shift cars and signal bikes. That was the absolute max they hit. Between, oh yeah, and the viral cars. So okay, then maybe they went a bit over it, but all of those were very inexpensive and cheap to both make and sell. Full bottles have not had that low a price point, and they've not been packaged as more than 2 per set, and their sets have been kind of getting pricey, so I see that backfiring in the same way a lot of the Q Ranger stuff had if they aren't going to keep the show going well. And hey, the show has been extremely well written. It's definitely a excellent addition to the series. It's I'm hoping everything it's been developing is going well. I didn't even address, I think, even a fraction of what I should have here, because I just pretty much gave you the overview of the show with this whole thing, and like I didn't even touch on Gentoku, Commander Night Rogue, not Commander Night Rogue, but the character Night Rogue, because he's currently out of the show right now, and when you look back on things, seems kind of, okay, not superfluous, but you see him as a like tertiary antagonist in amongst all things right now. He'll be coming back as Commander Rogue, we're pretty sure of that, but like in quick catch-up of events, yeah, not as much to detail on, but yeah, excellent show, great way to start off the post-Heisei Rider part of the series, because it started as a Heisei Rider show, but the Heisei era of Japan is now over, so I don't know what they named it as next, but yeah, it's going to be starting off that stack of things, so it's a good show to start everything up on, and I'm looking forward to where it's going for the second half of the show. I will try and start to get these out weekly again. Powder Ranger versus Lupin Ranger is starting this weekend, so hopefully I will be back to recapping Sentai now that hopefully we don't have one that doesn't suck. We'll see. It has a lot of potential to screw itself up, but I'll try and get something out on that. But hopefully this will now mean I can get these out more frequently. Hopefully. See y'all later.